Hello, and welcome to the first season of our Ask a Master Gardener virtual meeting. Hopefully, we're in the midst of our last heat wave and our last days of red flag warning, and we can soon begin to get into our own gardens and prepare for a long-awaited rain. The Sonoma County Master Gardener Organization has been serving home gardeners here in Sonoma County for almost 40 years. We're an organization of 244 volunteers who have been trained by the University of California, Davis. Our mission is to use the most current, unbiased, research-based information to help the home gardener find answers to issues as diverse as creating an edible food garden, choosing plants and pesticides safely, to preparing your home to be fire resistant. Please visit our website at sonomamg.ucanr.edu to learn more about what we do. We're going to ask now that you mute your audio and turn off your video. You'll find those controls by placing your cursor in the lower left corner of your screen. If you want to ask a question, please unmute yourself, and upon completion of the conversation you have with our panelists, please toggle your microphone back to the mute setting. On iPads, you'll find the chat dialog in the top right. You'll see 3 dots. If you click on those, the second option is chat, and you can type your question there. Another note for iPad users, you will not be able to save the chat, but there will be some very useful links posted during today's meeting. So you can go ahead and click them and save them during the session. In today's Zoom meeting, you'll be seeing myself, the moderator, Eartha, and today's panelists. Behind the scenes, we have a team of master gardeners doing real-time research to answer your questions, a host to facilitate the slides and on-screen presentation, and a gatekeeper who's going to ensure access and manage attendance and questions. Our session will be recorded, so if you don't want to be recorded, it's a good time to leave the meeting now, and you can view the recording later on YouTube. Allow me now to begin by introducing today's panelists, Karen, Patty, and Donna. Patty learned her love of gardening growing up in Santa Rosa on her Italian grandmother's farm. Patty's love for nature, planting trees, vegetables, and flowers has been lifelong. Upon retiring from teaching, Patty completed the Master Gardener course in 2018, learning the science behind sustainable gardening, and now enjoys spreading the word to the community. When not gardening, Patty likes to hike, read, and travel. Karen is a 5th-generation Sonoma County native and a first-year Sonoma County Master Gardener. Growing up in Pen Grove, her family had a large vegetable garden to feed their family of 9, with excess produce enough to sell to a local grocery store. In addition to her vegetable garden, Karen loves to grow flowers and is transitioning her garden to include more California natives. Donna is a retired teacher who's been a master gardener since 2001. In addition to gardening, she enjoys hiking, swimming, reading, traveling, meeting new people, and being a lifetime learner. Her favorite Master Gardener activities have been serving as a library leader for the past 10 years and working info tables at farmers markets. Her favorite answer to questions is often, I don't know the answer, but I usually do know where to find it. In fact, Master Gardeners don't have stone tablets containing the indisputable plant wisdom of the ages. We don't know everything, but what we do have is a considerable body of knowledge, both individually and collectively, gathered from UC research-based information. So I think we are ready to begin our questions. We will start with a question from Teresa asking, what's the best soil for flower pots? Soil seems to be packing down.
I can address this one. When you're looking for soil, be sure and check the label. Organic is best, and there are specific soils for pots, for flower pots. As far as keeping it tamped down, or that you find that it ends up being packed down, adding organic compost will help with the aeration of the soil. Patty, do you have anything to add?
I would just add, maybe take a stick or a spike of some kind and just kind of push it through the soil to make sure that the water is actually getting to all the roots. Just kind of aerate it a little bit. That always seems to help.
Okay, thank you. From Marisol, we have a question about fall veggie gardening. In fact, we have a few. Marisol's question is, what is the best media for starting seeds? And should I be adding fertilizer right there from the beginning?
Okay, I can answer that one because I start a lot of seeds. I purchase a soil starter for seeds, but I do think you could probably make your own. And I'm sure there's lots of information on the web for making your own, but at all our local nurseries, you can buy seed starter, and that's usually what I use. And I don't start with any fertilizer because it's usually in the mixture. Anyone else want to add?
I do, before someone else jumps in, because I just noted that Damien's question ties quite closely in here. And he wants to better understand how to manipulate the soil composition for a fall vegetable garden. Where to find tips for the best thing to plant for maximum success in the region.
Compost, compost, compost.
Can Damien see the web page on food gardening? That's on my screen now.
Yes. Thank you.
Most of your answers are there, Damien.
Outstanding. Thank you. I'm a newbie.
You're a newbie? Oh, welcome to gardening. It's really a fun thing.
Thank you.
Just lots of compost, organic matter is what gardens really need.
Okay, we have a question now from Barbara asking, my multi-trunked white rose of Sharon produced very few blossoms and very tiny leaves. Giving it additional water didn't seem to help. What should I do?
Perhaps you gave it too much water because Rose of Sharon is a drought tolerant form of hibiscus. So could it be too much water?
Are you here with us today? Sharon? No? Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Grace asks, what caused the yellowing and dropping of some old leaves on my tango mandarin tree? And has a second question. Let's do them one at a time. Thoughts on what caused the yellowing and dropping of some old leaves on the tango mandarin tree?
I can start on that one because I have a citrus where I've had a similar problem, and they're pretty finicky about their watering. They really like the water to be consistent, not too wet, not too dry. And if they get too wet, then the roots will rot and the leaves will all fall off. So I don't know if she's here right now, but that would be my question. Is it possible that you could have overwatered it?
Grace, if you're with us, you can unmute your mic in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Okay, thank you.
The other thing, I know because citrus is very popular to grow here, is they're heavy feeders. So they are a type of plant that you do need to fertilize. I think every 6 or 8 weeks, it's good to give them an acid-based fertilizer.
Yes, you can get specific fertilizers for citrus, which seem to work best, adapted just for citrus. And during growing and producing season, they often need it once a month.
Thank you. Bonnie asks, when should we harvest winter squash? Will the very hot days damage the interior?
Well, I have some winter squash growing, and yes, the heat is going to take a toll on all your gardens. So extra water when you might not be thinking of watering in October, but for your squash, let it continue growing with additional water during this hot spell. And then you should be able to harvest it and keep for almost a whole season.
Yeah, depending on the type of winter squash, some of them last, I still have some from last year that are still fine, amazingly enough, certain ones. Just make sure before you harvest that the skin is nice and tough,
Yeah.
and it should be fine.
Great. We have a question from Charles. This weekend, I'm sorry, let me start again. This weekend, I will fence off 1,000 square foot plot vegetable garden. The question is, what do I do about multiple animal burrows in the area? I will line planting beds and the holes for trees with half-inch mesh hardware.
Is Charles here?
Are you in West County? Where are you? Are you going to be battling gophers?
Yeah, we have questions for Charles. Is he here?
This question was pre-submitted, so Charles may not be in attendance right now.
Well, it's difficult without talking to him, but like Donna mentioned, West County does have a lot of gophers, but gophers are everywhere. So if you can protect your garden from them, yeah, that's the best option. But that's difficult if you're going to do 1,000-foot garden. So you just have to be very diligent about watching for them and trapping them, etc. Plant enough so that the gophers get a few. That's usually what I do.
Great.
And you might consider raised beds. You're fencing it because you have deer. Be sure your fences are at least 8 feet tall if you're trying to keep deer out.
We have two related questions here. Jay asks, can I make my own dirt? And a question from Mignon is asking, I recently moved to a place that has rock hard clay with no organic components. There was weed cloth. The previous owners dumped concrete and the bad stuff. I have applied mulch and amended the planting holes with compost. Do I just need to wait several years? I've heard that rototilling isn't recommended. Where can I get my soil tested? A lot of questions there.
Yeah.
The last one, shall we start with our link to the testing sites in Sonoma County?
Yes, that's a great idea.
We have those printed here and on the screen. Or shall I read them?
There we go.
There they are.
Great.
And you're not talking about dirt. If you're gardening, you're talking about soil. And that's where a healthy garden begins, with healthy soil. So you're doing the right thing by building your soil with compost, as much organic material as you can add.
Yeah, and I think it's a great idea to have your soil tested so you know what you're dealing with. And then you can, amend with that. But I do appreciate your plan of no-till. I think it's a great way to garden.
And perhaps raised beds in some areas might be beneficial. I have a backyard that a portion had a swimming pool filled in with concrete and debris, and raised beds are the answer.
Great. And on the subject of raised beds, Penny mentioned on, I believe it was Charles's question, that gopher wire lasts a lot longer than hardware cloth. So we'll just note that as well. We have another question from Grace asking, why did my Siberian irises stop flowering? They were planted 11 years ago. And I'm sorry, before I go on to this question, I just want to mention that there's a very good link on soil posted in the chat for those of you who had questions about soil. So thank you for that. And then we'll go to Grace's question, which I'll repeat. My Siberian irises have stopped flowering. They were planted 11 years ago.
I have some Siberian irises that I planted 9 years ago that they did not do well this year. And my problem was I hadn't divided them. They had grown so tight together. So perhaps that might help with the issue, dividing them, spreading them out, giving them new life.
Absolutely, I would agree with that. They they stop blooming if they're cramped together. And after maybe 2 or 3 years, it's a good idea to split them up. And you can give
Well,
some.
this is a good time of year to do that. The
Yeah.
fall is a good time for olive bulb planting.
Right.
The other thing is not to plant them too deep. They like to have some of their bulb part, or I don't know what you call that,
Bulbers.
exposed. So thank you.
The little tips above the soil line.
Thank you. We have a question from Pat asking, how can I get rid of English ivy short of using Roundup? My neighbors have a new puppy and insist that I don't use it, even if I offer just to paint it on.
Well,
Yeah, pick it up. That's what I did.
Thank you to your neighbor for, it is so toxic to the soil and the water. But pulling is going to be the best. Depending on how much you have, you can eradicate it by repeatedly pulling every shoot that comes up.
Yeah,
And you
that's
do
definitely the best.
because it attracts
rodents.
snails, and snails attract the rodents. So if you have English ivy, it's almost certain you will have rats.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's actually pretty easy to pull up if you, get it nice and wet, or if you do it after the first rain. It really comes up pretty easily. You just have to stay on top of it because, some will re-sprout and then you need to go back and, pull it again. But persistence and you'll get rid of it.
It's doable.
It really doesn't belong in
Patty,
our
this is Cleo. We will put in the links, we will put the pest note from UCIPM on how to manage ivy.
Great.
Great. So we have a question from Teresa. I'm sorry. I believe we have done that one. This was, what vegetables are well suited for planting in pots? And that was from Susan.
I think just about any vegetable can be in a pot, even, certainly from tomatoes, carrots, if you have it deep enough in loose soil. I don't know if there would be any restrictions as long as the pot size accommodates some of the roots. Certainly your herbs do great in pots.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of people in cities garden in containers on their little decks, so it can be done.
All your lettuces do well in pots. All your winter greens do well in pots.
I've even seen like cucumbers and stuff trellised up in a big, like a wine barrel, and then they put some kind of lattice or something in there, and the cucumbers trellis right up there and have, just delicious cucumbers on them. So I think pretty much anything is doable. And we also have, if you look on our website, there is an article about container gardening there.
Great. We have a couple of questions here about tomatoes. Lynette asks, I had pollinator flowers next to my tomatoes, and the tomatoes grew well, but I got limited tomatoes and some died. I did use fertilizer and I had them on a drip. And we also had a question about when to pull tomatoes. Many of us have tomatoes that are still producing, or maybe perhaps less. And should we pull them and plant winter crops, or what is your recommendation there?
Well, I can address part of that. Depending on what part of the county you're in, there's so many different varieties of tomatoes that will do better in a hot climate versus out near Bodega Bay. So the variety is important. And tomatoes that get watered a lot produce a plethora of green, but not very many tomatoes. So you do have to be limited on the watering. A good deep watering once or maybe twice a week, if it's really hot, might be more beneficial than a constant drip.
And once the fruit has set, they do fine without any more water. Once your fruit is set. In fact, you can dry farm tomatoes.
And the part about pulling them up or not pulling them up. Here in Sonoma County, most of us have frost. And so at a certain point, you're not going to be able to grow the tomatoes anymore because the weather is going to change. And so it's really up to you. If you want to plant a winter garden, obviously, if you don't have enough space, you're going to need to pull your tomatoes and plant something else. But you can leave them up until the first frost. However, as the days get shorter and there's not as much sun, the tomatoes aren't as delicious as they are in the summer. So that's another thing to keep in mind.
And they only grow and ripen when our nighttime temperatures are 50 degrees or above. We're still getting over 50 degrees at night here, so they should be fine till it gets cold.
Well,
Also, they will even ripen, green tomatoes will even ripen. So if you expect the frost to be coming, you can cut the tomatoes and bring them in the house, and you'll probably get a few more that'll still ripen up.
thank you. On the subject of tomatoes, well, for one more in here, this questioner has a tomato plant that has dieback, wilting, stem damage, even though they're 3 to 4 feet tall. And this is a repeat problem from last year.
Well, first, did you possibly plant them in the same place? That's rule number one with tomatoes. You do not want to plant them in the same spot year after year because any disease they're subject to will live in the soil. And verticillium wood is one of the most common, so we want to pull them and dispose of them in the garbage, not the compost.
Yeah.
Great.
I think if you're really getting the wilt, then try to find some resistant varieties because that can be really heartbreaking. The heirlooms tend to have that problem often. So read up on the type. If you have heirlooms, read up on the type that you've chosen to see if you can find one that's more disease resistance to the wilt. It's a common problem.
Great. And Penny adds here, when at the end of the growing season, to cut spent tomato vines off at soil level and just leave the roots in the ground. Do we want to expand on that?
Great idea. No till.
And no, yes, no disturbing of the soil. Yeah. Great.
The one thing maybe if you really had a problem with the Fruticillium wilt or either of the wilts is maybe then to dig it up and dispose of the whole plant. Just, you know, but as long as your plant's been healthy, just cutting them off at the base.
Great.
Eartha, can Donna tell us about her trick of what she does with ripening tomatoes?
Yes, when the first frost is predicted, I will cut them off at the base and take the whole plant, no matter how long, into some covered space. We had a woodshed where I'd set up a ladder, drape the whole plant over the ladder, and go out and pick tomatoes well into November, sometimes December, because with all the leaves still on the plant, they continue to nourish and ripen the tomatoes.
Wow, wonderful.
Also, I'll add too, if you go on our website, there's several articles about growing tomatoes. Very informative.
Great. We have a question from Antonio. What are the opportunities for a hobby vineyard owner?
Yum. Can I have a glass of wine?
And we have a master gardener who teaches that in our speaker series, Dennis Prestigian, lots of syllables in his last name, but he teaches hobby vineyards and he is an excellent speaker and so much information. He also takes his grapes and makes his own wine and sometimes shares it with us.
Yeah, I just need space.
So Antonio, if you are listening to this, keep your eye on the UC Master Gardener website. Coming events are listed on the left of the page, and perhaps there will be an opportunity to see this talk at some point. We have a poll up now. For those of you who are here, would you like to take a minute and participate in the poll? And while we're taking the poll, I will go on to another question for our panelists. And this is also from Grace. My 11-year-old manzanita has green leaves on the outside, but brown, brittle, dry leaves underneath the green canopy. Did I water too much or too little?
Well, they're a drought tolerant plant. Go ahead.
So they are a native, and so they're not used to summer water at all. So perhaps too much.
That
Is
would
the
be what I would say as well.
Great.
most likely.
And I mean, a certain amount of dry leaves is pretty common this time of year for natives like that. I mean, they do lose leaves. I don't know, without talking to her, about how many leaves are being lost.
Okay. I'm going to just take this moment to remind people that there are some wonderful links to today's questions in the chat. For those of you, again, who are on an iPad, you'll want to save these links now for future reference. So just a reminder. Polling.
Bertha, only 2 people have responded. If maybe other people can respond if they see the poll. We
Yes.
want to find out about if you're going to farmers markets, or if COVID has curtailed your participation in farmers markets.
Yes, thank you, Cleo. So the poll is up on your screen. If you'd like to answer, we currently have 67% of pollers saying that they go to farmers markets frequently, 33% saying no, and 67% of respondents are saying that they've spoken with master gardeners at farmers markets, with 33% saying no. And for the third question, which farmers markets do you usually visit? We have no responses at this time. So we have a question that I think is a lot of people are wondering, which is, is it safe to eat produce and greens from your garden after we've had such smoke in the air this season and since 2017, actually?
Well, we have some information about that on our website. But if you really wash your things really well, I think they're pretty safe to go ahead. That's pretty much been the consensus. The one time if you're near a fire where a lot of homes have burned, that would be the one time where you might be worried about it being more toxic. But usually the ash from wood burning is not harmful.
Okay.
And we do have some information about that. I'm sure we can post that too.
We did a very thorough study of our produce after the Tubbs fire. Many master gardeners participated in picking our veggies, and they were sent to labs to be tested. And the results of that study were that most of the vegetables were healthy to eat. The toxicity did not get into the plants. But yes, wash them for sure. And as Patty said, it depends on what kind of ash too. A lot of, yeah. So how near you were to a burning home with lots of toxic material burning.
But wood ashes actually can be somewhat of a fertilizer for your garden. So just really wash your vegetables carefully, and they should be fine.
Okay.
And here's the link.
Oh, thank you.
That was a community science study. Many people participated after the Tubbs fire.
We have a message that there may be an issue with the poll, that the submit button may not be working for everyone. So I'll just mention that to the group.
Well, we're new, so bear with us. It's our first time with our Master Garden Virtual.
Yes. Okay.
I'd like to take just a minute. I don't know if the person who is still with us about making their own dirt, but I would like to commend anybody that takes that on, because it's really, I mean, if there's so much positive stuff about starting your own compost pile these days, and there's so much information about it, and even a very small garden can support a small compost pile and really use all those leftover, branches and produce and things that you have to, instead of putting them in the garbage, to begin making your own dirt. So I really encourage people to try it.
Oh, that's so good, Patty. And also, if you don't have a lot of space, you can simply do vermicomposting. I've moved from a big country property to a little city lot, and my little garden is flourishing just with vermicompost.
Yeah.
I have bins, and I put all my vegetable fruit clippings and coffee grounds. Most plants like their soil a little acidic, and coffee grounds do that. And we happen to drink a lot of coffee, so I think that's why I have happy worms, and they eat my garbage and give me beautiful black gold.
Isn't that something? Yeah. There's lots of information too about how to start your own vermiculture bin and how to start your own compost bin, small and big. So yeah, I encourage everybody to give it a try.
Patty,
And
I'm going to link to our YouTube channel, where we have a video on how to do vermiculture and how to do composting.
Right.
And it's an entire hour seminar on how to do it, okay?
Yeah, great resource and free. So take advantage.
Thanks to Cleo and to Stephanie for reminding us of that. And again, links are posted in the chat box. I do not have any more questions at this moment, I believe. Are there questions from attendees who would like to unmute or either type a question into the chat box or unmute and ask?
when you come to the farm market, you always stop and talk with us. So
Yeah.
well, ask us questions. Tell us about your gardens.
Yes.
What's working?
I had one question from someone who was wanting to find out how to get rid of tree squirrels. And I was going to refer them to the pest notes, because some squirrels have a legal status and you can't trap them, but some you can. So you do need to follow through on the pest notes. Perhaps one of our researchers could post that on the chat room.
Great. Yes.
I'm currently having a raccoon issue, and they are another pest that you cannot trap. But I'm trying to coexist. Not very happily about it, though.
They managed to come my little tiny garden and eat all my tomatoes and all my strawberries. So I'm going to be giving away all my strawberry plants. Anybody wants, they're very healthy, but it's not my job to feed raccoons. You want some?
Yes, I'm lucky that they're not eating mine. They're just digging everything up.
Oh, we do actually have another question from Pat, who asks, how can I get rid of Bermuda grass? It is very hard to pull and dig out, as many of us know.
Very hard.
Yeah, I want to hear the answer to this too.
Yeah.
I think this might be the one time that you would result to using glyphosate and very carefully follow the instructions on the label, go to our website and read about it, and it'll give specific instructions about the best time to deal with that. The other way you can get rid of it, which I have actually done, is sheet mulching. That is an ideal if you have a big patch where, you know, you can just kill everything at once, is just cover it all with cardboard and then put a thick layer of compost on top.
Or better yet, if you can do it in the summer, if you cover it with black plastic and leave it for months to just burn, the black plastic will get so hot that it will actually burn the roots, I understand.
Or clear plastic too, I've heard. Again, yeah, it's a really tricky one, really tricky.
Well, since we're talking about glyphosate, I have a question, if I can just pose one myself. And that is that I rarely use it. For the most persistent problems, I have cut a plant off at the ground, like persistent blackberries, and put just a dot on the cut stem. Is that as effective as putting it on a larger area of the plant, like a leaf?
My understanding is the way it works is through the green leaf. So
Okay.
I think you would have to put it on the leaf.
Thank you.
And I mean, here's the pest note on it, and it's pretty thorough. So you can read about how to apply it, because you definitely want to apply it at a certain time and follow the instructions carefully. And very, very, you know, isolated use.
And we have another question from Pat about herbicides that are specific for grasses. And I'm wondering if this may be a question in part about grasses growing in a bed of other things, but perhaps that's my speculation. But specific herbicides that target grasses?
Yeah, we don't tend to use too many herbicides.
Okay.
So I'm not sure, is she here? Could we talk to her a little bit about what specific grasses she's talking about and where they are, you know, because that would make a big difference about how you want to handle it.
The IPM, somebody has posted the IPM
Yes.
for these grasses on my screen. Is everybody seeing that?
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Yes. Whoever posted it? Penny?
Yes.
You?
We have a question from Shirley Chilcott saying, I have an angel's trumpet in a pot, but that's all I'm able to see in the chat area. So Shirley, if you're attending, if you could elaborate a little bit on that question, unless it's my viewing problem, that would be great. And while we're waiting for Shirley's response, Stephanie is commenting that as a treatment for blackberry brambles, cutting the end, the thick stem, and putting it in a soda can with glyphosate to deliver just the vegetable killer to just that plant has been successful.
You see that line along the top underneath the pumpkins?
Yes.
Yes.
With Espanol, food gardening, green help, garden help, garden tips. Yeah, that's the one. If you click on any of those, you'll find a sub-menu underneath it. And you click on any of those items under there and you will go to that place. Year-round gardening is one of my favorites. And there you will find an absolute wealth on information on what to plant when. And it's updated fairly frequently to keep, because unfortunately our climate is changing a bit these days. So sometimes we can widen the windows or narrow the windows of what you can plant when. So all of these things like this, we update frequently. If you want to.
What's nice about this one is that you could download it as a PDF and keep it on your refrigerator.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It's
a good
one of
one
the
to
most
help.
used pieces of paper on my desk.
Okay, so let me go back.
Go back. And so the top yellow bar is sort of major navigation, but there's another navigation bar, and that's the one on the left. And clicking on any of those will also, will also take you to submenus. And in particular, as we've been talking about vegetables a lot, if you go to food gardening articles, for instance, then you will get a list of all of our food gardening articles. And it's by far the easiest way to find anything about tomatoes or squash or whatever else it is that you're interested in. The other really, really good one to know about is the recommended plants for Sonoma County, because that will give you lists of the various things that you may be interested in planting: plants that avoided by deer, plants for drought, plants for beneficial insects. And there's lots of information on the things there.
This one has, this one here is very useful, and it was
Oh,
just
yes.
updated. That's another one. It tells you the plant, it tells you the characteristics, the size, how much water, where you can place it, whether it's a native or wildlife, you know, whether it's a good habitat plant. So these are what we call the Sonoma superstars. And these are the plants that do best. It's a mix of natives and non-natives, and they're categorized by trees, shrubs, ground covers, perennials, grasses, just exactly what you need. So right now, the season where you're planting, if you can download this and take it to a nursery, you know which plants work really well here in Sonoma County.
So those are my favorite things in the menu bars that I use the most. But you know, if you're interested in, you're trying to answer questions on Firewise landscaping and Firewise stuff, that's all under the Firewise landscaping. And the other major thing on navigation is the search at the top, far top right of your screen. Right, well, yeah, by the sitemap. And that, it isn't the best search in the world, but it will get you to places. We're at the mercy of what UCANR provides, and you know, we use it as best we can.
Penny, I looked at our projects yesterday and it did not list this Ask a Master Gardener. Will that be added?
I'm sorry, it did not list what?
What we're doing now, Ask a Master Gardener, was not listed.
It's on the front page.
It is.
On the home page.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, right there.
Another,
You're right, it's not listed under projects. I think everything's in flux with COVID and staying at home and all of that stuff. And we don't know what's here for now and here for tomorrow.
Everything is in flux.
Yes, it is
a
in
couple
flux.
of critical things is the information. If you have need more detailed answers, you submit here. That's the email for the information desk with their telephone number. And also Garden Sense, our program where master gardeners will come out to your home, if depends on what's going on right now, and give you a consultation on water use and irrigation. It's actually a national and internationally award-winning program that we are very proud of. So if you click on the Garden Sense program, you can make, it will take you where you can make an appointment. You can click here to get a consultation.
Okay, wonderful.
Cleo, do you want to cover the website a little bit too?
Yeah, the other information on the Firewise landscaping, for example, right now under our red flag warning days, it gives you specific recommendations on what you should do ahead of time, ahead of a red flag day, and what you should do to prepare for a red flag day. For example, some of the things that we forget are bringing in all your cushions, you know, all this information about what to do with your gas cans that you have. All the detailed information is here. And also the other part is the sort of breaking down defensible space into a one-page document that you can understand what each of the zones are. Zone, you know, what are the defensible space zones. And then the most critical thing is watering and mulching in the garden, and also on maintenance. The critical thing in Firewise landscaping is maintenance, maintenance, maintenance. Anything else? Lawn replacement plant articles?
How about upcoming events?
Oh, that's,
They're up there on the top right.
yeah.
in the home.
Whenever you want to know our events, they're all here. They're listed here. And if you go, there's a very handy thing where you could view the complete calendar here. If you view the complete calendar, you can see what they are. And the best part is if you go to the event,
Ah, there it is. Oh.
if you go to the event, you can add it to your calendar here. By just clicking on here, it adds it to your calendar so you can never forget a Master Gardener event.
Wonderful. Okay. Are there more questions? All right. Well, I may just say that it looks like our time is kind of getting towards the end. So I want to thank everyone for attending. This is our first virtual Ask a Master Gardener. And if we haven't had time to answer your question or didn't answer it in depth enough for you, please do go to the website and submit your question to the information desk. The UC Master Gardener website is really, as Cleo has been showing us, a treasure trove of information, articles on many subjects, not just Firewise gardening, the Garden Sense program, but water-wise use, and of course the listing of upcoming events. Please do explore the website and also visit Master Gardeners on Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram. And again, I will say thank you for coming.